People are pessimistic. People think bad shit is going to happen all the time. At least right now, that's what people think. I see it on Twitter. War, hyperinflation, depression, nationalization, social unrest. It's all I see on Twitter. People have lost their minds. So, I don't know. I mean, look, all these things are possible. We have had bad times in our history. We had a bad 16-year period in our history. From 1929 to 1945, it sucked. Sucked bad. It was really bad. And, and everything worked out. 16 years is a long time for things to suck. Like, I don't know if people today could tolerate that. So, but we made it through. And the interesting thing about the 30s is that there was art. It was great art, great culture, commerce during that time period. Stock market stayed open. People did make money during that time period. You know, one thing I've noticed in recent weeks is how pessimistic people are, and the amount of bearish sentiment is astounding. And the thing with pessimism is that it gets into your brain and it festers there and it changes your whole outlook on life. Like, if you hang around negative people, it's going to make you negative. And this is what it's funny because people say that about real life. Say, well, I don't want to hang out with that guy because he's so negative all the time. And then they'll go on Twitter and they'll hang around with like millions of people that are super negative all the time. So it's the same thing. It gets into your head. It's poison. It's really bad, you know? I mean, I have to go on Twitter for my job. It's part of what I study for sentiment. But I can only handle like 10 minutes at a time. And I got to turn it off. So, just a bunch of miserable fuckers on Twitter. And I can't take it anymore. You know, one of the things that people are being pessimistic about is the housing market. And as I'm recording this, new home sales came out yesterday, and it was a disaster. I don't remember the exact numbers, but they were expecting like 580,000 new home sales, and they got 510,000. It was a big mess. The housing market is hit the wall, for sure, right? It's not as bad as you think. It's not that bad. You know, and people have this recency bias, right? Because we've gotten into trouble with housing before. It happened 14, 15 years ago. And this is what people do. They say it's another financial crisis. It's happening all over again. I'm like, no, it's not. It's absolutely not the case. Calm down. So, let me give you two pieces of stats here. Number one, 40% of houses in this country are owned free and clear. No mortgage. 40% of houses have no mortgage. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the average LTV, loan to value, of a house in the United States is 33%, which means that the average house has 67% equity. That's not fake news. That's real. The average house has 67% equity. You're like, I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't either. I just learned it the other day. But it's absolutely true. And what happened was we paid off all the debt. We had all this debt from 2007. And we spent the last 15 years paying it all off. And now we probably have the least amount of leverage in the housing market in history. And underwriting standards are good. Terrific. So we're not giving out these stupid loans. You know, these ninja loans and liar loans and all that crap. We're not doing it anymore. So the housing market is super healthy. What happened was it got really, really hot, and now it's cooling off. And that's basically it. It's all it is. And people are going fucking insane about this. They're going insane. They literally think we're going to have a depression. The housing market's going to crash. We're going to have a depression. It can't happen. There's no debt. It literally cannot happen. The price of houses can come down, but this is what happened in the financial crisis. You had forced selling because people were underwater. But if people have 67% equity, they're not underwater. It's nuts. So, people are doom mongering online. There's this guy who calls himself Alf, Macro Alf. And he's the biggest offender when it comes to the housing market. He's a macro doom guy. I talk about the macro doom guys all the time. They've taken over Twitter. Like 2017 was completely different on Twitter. That was bull market Twitter. And you know who was running Twitter at the time was the Ritholtz guys, like Josh Brown and all those guys. Like that was optimistic Twitter, right? Not anymore. Now it's all the macro doom guys. So it's just, look, I could name a bunch of names, but you get the picture. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. It's, it's nuts. There was a day that I was online the other day, and I literally said, "This is the most bearish day I've ever seen in my entire life." I mean, it was nuts. There's actually a Twitter account called Hedonometer, something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but what it is it's a service that measures the how sad or happy Twitter is and charts it over time. And you can see charts of it. And the saddest day on Twitter, the most negative day on Twitter, was the day after George Floyd was killed. That was the saddest day on Twitter. I have not seen the Hedonometer stuff in a while, so I don't know what it says. But I'm telling you, in terms of financial market sentiment, like it's as bad as it gets. So this stock market, housing market, it's a pullback. It's a correction. It's nothing more sinister than that. Are you thinking about buying a house? I mean, now's not the best time, but it's not a terrible time. Now, it's not a terrible time to buy a house. I mean, think about this. Prices have come down a bit, so that's good. Interest rates are still high, but not egregious. And it's turned from a seller's market into a buyer's market, so you can squeeze them a little bit on the price. You can, get some concessions, get a good deal. It's not a bad time to buy a house. This is what sentiment is all about. Like people, we just go from extremes. We go from it's an amazing time to buy a house. Let's all buy houses, and like no, now it's terrible. Like nobody's gonna buy houses. It's a mass psychology, right? And in mass psychology, you generally want to be doing the opposite of what people are doing. So if nobody's buying a house, probably a pretty good time to buy a house. I'm building a house, probably a good time to build a house. Yeah. Buy when you can, not when you have to. Let's put it that way. Buying a house is an act of optimism. Because what are you saying if you're buying a house? You're betting that you won't lose your job, okay? Or you're betting that even if you do lose your job, you'll be able to find another job, which is optimism. You're betting on yourself, right? You're betting that the economy will stay strong. You're betting that the political environment will be stable. You're betting on a whole bunch of things going right at the same time. Usually they do, I'm not an economist. I've been watching the economy for 20 years. There's been points in my career when I said this is a problem. And I'm not saying that right now. I really don't see it. It is a pullback. It is a correction. That's all it is. So, yes, there was a bubble in some stocks. There was a bubble in SPACs, and there was a bubble in crypto and tech stocks, the FANGs, all that stuff. And I don't know if you've noticed what's happened with the stock market recently, but it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper because it's down about, well, at this point, I don't know, like 12, 15% or something like that. But earnings are way up. So valuations have come way down. Like, I don't get it. Why is everybody so upset? I remember when the dot-com bubble crashed, I mean, everybody was saying we were going into a depression. Like, it was the biggest stock market crash of all time. NASDAQ was down 80%. Biggest crash of all time. And guess what? Not only did we not go into a depression, but we were barely in a recession. GDP was down 0.1%. Barely below zero. Barely a recession. And all you heard was that we were going to go into a depression. Wasn't that bad. Felt bad because everybody's 401ks got annihilated, but it wasn't that bad, Got to keep things in perspective. So we're in a recession right now, for sure. We're having a pullback. It'll be a very mild recession. So And most of this is driven by the Fed raising rates, which the Fed does every once in a while. They have a rate hike cycle. Financial conditions tighten, something breaks. You have a little mini recession, a little pullback. It's a garden variety rate hike cycle. It's all it is. So I truly believe that. Inflation's not going to go away, but inflation will go down significantly. And we're going to be in a better place a year from now. People will have forgotten how bearish they were. They already forgot how bullish they were in 2021. People have no recollection of how bullish they were last year. And there's probably like a German word for this, which is forgetting about how you felt about something in the past. It's got to be a German word for that. That's one thing that I'm really good at because I remember viscerally how I feel at various points in history. I remember what it was like when Reagan was inaugurated and the hostages were released. I remember that. I was watching TV. I was a little kid. I was like 6 years old or something like that. I remember all this stuff. Last year, people were really happy. And people now are so fucking like out of their mind, they don't even remember how good things were last year. They have no recollection of it. So people look at it. It's funny. People look at a chart of the stock market. There's ups and downs. And when I look at a chart of the stock market, I see emotions. I see how people felt. And I'm not really looking at the chart to see where it's going, but I can look in the past and think about what kind of emotions were present when something was happening. Like the pandemic, like in 2020. I mean, that was panic. And I'll never forget what that felt like. That was nuts. It was also fun, but it was nuts. So, but people are really, really miserable right now. And I'm kind of miserable right now. I mean, I'm fine, but I'm slightly miserable about my house because this is going to be stressful for the next year. And I'm miserable that we're canceling student debt. I went to college for free, but I had to serve in the fucking military for 5 years. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe we should do that. Hey, you can get your student debt forgiven if you serve in the military for 5 years. That seems like a fair trade. They're having trouble recruiting. So, what else am I miserable about? We're not going to get into that right now. Tomorrow, I go on a plane to Miami, which is my happy place. And I'm staying at the One Hotel, which is the nicest hotel there. It's going to be fantastic. The only time I can stay at that place is in August, which is when things in Miami get really cheap. Going to see a bunch of friends, have a great time. Going to my favorite club in Miami. Do not sit on the furniture. That's my favorite club in Miami. They play the world's best organic house at that club, and it is going to be awesome. Thanks for listening to the Be Smart podcast. I'm Jared Dilley, and see you next time.